Niger just made the boldest independent move in recent African history. After being told what is best for their country for many years, Niger's leadership stood up, said enough, and ended a military agreement that gave foreign troops freedom on their soil. But they did not stop there. Within months, they secured a game-changing nuclear energy deal with Russia that promises to transform Niger from a uranium exporter into a nuclear-powered nation. The mastermind behind this strategic playbook? A 34-year-old leader from Burkina Faso whose influence is inspiring a new generation of African independence. Ibrahim Traoré's blueprint for true independence is spreading across West Africa, and Niger just proved it works. Before we continue, hit that like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm. Niger's decision to end its military cooperation with the United States was not made overnight. It was the result of years of growing frustration with an arrangement that served American interests far more than Nigerian ones. The U.S. had invested over $1 billion and deployed more than 1,000 troops for nearly a decade. But what did Niger have to show for it? Colonel Amadou Abdramani, speaking for Niger's regime, called the U.S. military presence illegal and based on an unfair agreement unilaterally imposed in 2012. The breaking point came when U.S. officials expressed concerns that Niger was in secret talks to provide Iran with access to its uranium reserves. Niger's ruling military became angered by these accusations and what they saw as attempts to dictate their independent decisions. The meeting that ended the partnership was reportedly tense, with American officials apparently overstepping diplomatic boundaries by making demands rather than requests. This heavy-handed approach backfired spectacularly, pushing Niger to formally terminate the agreement that had allowed U.S. military personnel and civilian staff to operate in the country since 2014. From Niger's perspective, they had hosted foreign troops who operated with significant autonomy, mostly making security decisions that affected Nigerian sovereignty without meaningful consultation. Meanwhile, terrorist attacks continued, poverty persisted, and Niger remained dependent on external support for basic security functions. However, Niger's leadership did not just want to end what was not working, they had a vision for what could replace it. While American officials scrambled to understand why their billion-dollar investment had failed to buy loyalty, Niger was already deep in negotiations for a partnership that would fundamentally transform their economic prospects. The same uranium resources that had enriched foreign companies for decades were about to become the foundation for Niger's own energy independence. What happened next would redefine not just Niger's energy sector, but the entire concept of resource partnerships in Africa. On July 29, 2025, Russian Energy Minister Sergei Tsivilev arrived in Niamey with an offer that would change Niger's future forever. Russia's State Atomic Energy Corporation Rosatom signed a comprehensive civil nuclear cooperation agreement with Niger's energy ministry. It was a complete transformation of how Niger would use its uranium wealth and not just another mining contract. The timing was deliberate, and it was to show that while some partners walked away when their demands were not met, others stepped forward with genuine opportunities for mutual benefit. The agreement represented everything Niger had been seeking, but never receiving from previous partnerships. Where Western companies had focused solely on extracting and exporting Niger's uranium, Russia proposed building an entire nuclear energy ecosystem within Niger itself. Niger sits on approximately 7% of the world's known uranium reserves, making it one of the largest uranium producers globally. Yet despite decades of mining operations, Niger remains one of the poorest countries on Earth, with roughly 80% of its population lacking access to electricity. The irony is staggering, as Niger's uranium has powered nuclear plants across Europe while Nigerians live in energy poverty. The Russian Nuclear Cooperation Agreement changes this equation completely. The Memorandum of Understanding includes plans for nuclear power plants, energy distribution systems, nuclear medicine facilities, and comprehensive workforce training. It is not about energy generation, but technological transformation and industrial development. Our task is not simply to participate in uranium mining, said Russian Energy Minister Sergei Tsivilev during his visit to Niamey. We must create an entire system for the development of peaceful atomic energy in Niger. This single statement captures the fundamental difference between Niger's old partnerships and its new direction. Russian officials describe it as a comprehensive infrastructure effort to bring reliable electricity to Niger's roughly 25 million citizens. But the implications go far beyond domestic electricity supply. Once operational, Niger's nuclear facilities could make the country a regional energy exporter, supplying electricity to neighboring West African nations. This would fundamentally alter Niger's economic profile from raw material supplier to value-added energy producer. Before, Niger's uranium industry perfectly illustrates what economists call the resource curse, in which countries rich in natural resources remain poor due to unfavorable extraction agreements. French company Orano has dominated Niger's uranium sector for decades, extracting ore through long-term contracts that kept Niger locked into raw material export dependency. Under these arrangements, Niger received minimal royalties while uranium was shipped to France for processing into nuclear fuel. The value addition happened elsewhere, leaving Niger with environmental costs and limited economic benefits. This colonial-era structure persisted long after Niger's political independence. The Russian partnership promises to break this cycle by including substantial technology transfer and local capacity building. Russian state corporation Rosatom is not just buying Niger's uranium, they will be helping Niger to develop the technical capabilities to process and utilize uranium for domestic energy needs. This transformation represents economic liberation through partnership restructuring. Instead of accepting permanent status as a commodity supplier, Niger is positioning itself to control more of the nuclear fuel value chain. The long-term implications are massive. Economic liberation through resource control was only part of Niger's comprehensive independence strategy. The leadership understood that true independence required more than just favorable mining contracts. It demanded security arrangements that actually served Niger's interests rather than foreign agendas. The same principles that guided their uranium negotiations would now reshape how Niger approached military partnerships. If they could break free from extractive economic relationships, they could certainly restructure security cooperation to prioritize Niger's defense needs over external military objectives. Although Niger's security challenges have not disappeared, the approach to addressing them has fundamentally changed. In January 2024, Niger and Russia formalized a defense pact, and by April, Russia had deployed 100 military instructors and equipment to support Niger's armed forces. The Russian security partnership operates on different principles than the American model. Russian military advisors work more closely with local forces, focusing on building autonomous capabilities rather than creating dependency relationships. The emphasis is on technology transfer and genuine capacity building. This approach addresses one of Niger's main frustrations with Western military partnerships, which is the lack of meaningful technology transfer and capacity building. American forces operated sophisticated equipment that Nigerian military personnel could not maintain or operate independently. Russian partnerships include training on equipment that local forces can eventually manage autonomously. The security benefits extend beyond tactical improvements. Russian partnerships enhance the sovereignty of African militaries by reducing dependence on foreign bases and external command structures. Niger's military can now make security decisions based on Niger's interests rather than accommodating foreign military priorities. Niger's pivot toward Russia is part of a broader economic diversification strategy that includes partnerships with multiple non-Western countries. Chinese companies are building critical infrastructure across Niger, including transportation networks and telecommunication systems. Turkish firms are expanding agricultural projects and construction activities. This multi-partner approach gives Niger leverage that single-partner dependency never provided. When negotiations with one partner stall, alternatives exist. When one partner imposes conditions, others offer different terms. This competitive environment benefits Niger's development goals. Officials from Russia and Niger explored potential joint ventures in sectors ranging from energy and transportation to agriculture and mineral extraction. This comprehensive approach stands in stark contrast to narrow partnerships that focus on single sectors or specific commodities. The diversification strategy also includes efforts to reduce dependence on traditional Western financial institutions. Niger is exploring alternative financing mechanisms and trade relationships that bypass systems designed to maintain dependency relationships. However, Niger's new approach to security partnerships was not happening in isolation. It was part of a coordinated regional strategy that multiplied the benefits for all participating countries. The same principles of true independence and mutual benefit that guided Niger's bilateral relationships with Russia were being applied on a multilateral scale through strategic alliances with neighboring nations. What made this regional cooperation particularly powerful was its foundation in shared resources and complementary capabilities, with Niger's emerging nuclear energy sector positioned to become the cornerstone of broader West African energy independence. The alliance of Sahel states, which includes Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, is coordinating development strategies to maximize regional benefits from individual country achievements. Once operational, Niger's nuclear plants could supply electricity to neighboring countries through regional grid connections. Burkina Faso currently imports most of its electricity from Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. Mali relies heavily on imported fuel for power generation. A nuclear-powered Niger could provide clean, reliable electricity to both alliance partners. This energy independence would strengthen all three countries economically and politically. Reduced energy import bills would free up foreign exchange for other development priorities. Reliable electricity supply would attract industrial investment and improve living standards across the region. The geopolitical implications are equally significant. Countries that control their energy supply have more flexibility in international relations. They can't be threatened with energy cutoffs or manipulated through fuel price increases. Regional energy independence enhances collective sovereignty. The speed and coordination of Niger's pivot caught American policymakers completely off guard, revealing fundamental misunderstandings about African agency and strategic thinking. U.S. officials had operated under the assumption that their military presence and financial investments guaranteed influence and loyalty. The idea that Niger might independently assess the value of these partnerships and find them wanting seemed to never cross their minds. Internal U.S. government communications revealed a patronizing attitude that likely contributed to the partnership's collapse. American officials had grown accustomed to making unilateral decisions about Niger's security needs, often bypassing meaningful consultation with local leadership. When Niger began exploring alternative partnerships, the U.S. response was to issue warnings and ultimatums rather than competitive offers or improved terms. This heavy-handed approach, by treating Niger like a wayward client rather than an independent nation, demonstrated exactly why the partnership had become unsustainable. Instead of engaging in diplomatic dialogue about concerns, American officials made public accusations that undermined Niger's independence and dignity. Washington's reaction to losing Niger reveals the broader crisis in American foreign policy toward Africa. Decades of taking African partnerships for granted had left U.S. officials unprepared for a continent where countries increasingly evaluate relationships based on concrete benefits rather than historical ties. The assumption that military aid and counterterrorism cooperation would automatically translate into political influence proved to be a costly miscalculation. The most telling part was the apparent surprise among U.S. officials when Niger formally terminated their military agreement. Despite clear signs of growing dissatisfaction and multiple diplomatic warnings, American policymakers seemed genuinely shocked that Niger would prioritize its own interests over maintaining convenient arrangements for U.S. military operations. On July 26, 2025, the U.S. Department of State announced an indefinite suspension of all routine visa services at the U.S. Embassy in Niamey. The visa suspension does not apply to diplomatic and official applications, but the department ordered U.S. consulates worldwide to adopt stricter screening for visa applications from Nigerian citizens. Officials cite high rates of overstaying visas, but the truth is that it was a response to Niger's expulsion of their influence. Visa restrictions as a primary response tool represents admission of strategic failure. The visa suspension aligns with broader tightening of migratory policies by the Trump administration, including enhanced social media checks for visa applicants and restrictions against foreign students or residents with views deemed incompatible with American foreign policy. This harsh approach contrasts sharply with Russia's positive engagement strategy, While America focuses on what Niger loses by ending the military partnership, Russia emphasizes what Niger gains through nuclear development and technology transfer. However, the influence of Ibrahim Traoré throughout Niger's transformation cannot be understated. Traoré seized global attention by overthrowing Burkina Faso's junta in September 2022, vowing to reclaim true independence and reject colonial influence. His success created a blueprint that other African leaders are now following. Traoré's approach combines practical assessment of national interests with a clear message about African dignity and independence. He demonstrated that alternative partnerships are possible by ending French military presence in Burkina Faso while securing Russian military and economic support. This success provided both inspiration and practical guidance for Niger's leadership. The coordination between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger reflects genuine collaboration between leaders who trust each other and share similar visions for their countries' futures. Traoré's instrumental role in founding the Alliance of Sahel states provided the institutional framework for this coordination. Niger's leaders studied Traoré's model and adapted it to their own circumstances. The language used by Niger's officials, emphasizing independence, dignity, and mutual benefit, mirrors Traoré's message. The sequence of actions that includes security partnership first, then broader economic cooperation follows Traoré's playbook exactly. The Traoré doctrine argues that African countries can and should dictate the terms of their international partnerships. Niger's success in applying this doctrine validates the approach and demonstrates its broader applicability across the continent. The nuclear deal with Russia represents the ultimate expression of this new approach. Instead of accepting permanent status as a uranium exporter, Niger demanded and received partnership terms that promise genuine development. Instead of tolerating foreign military bases operating with minimal local control, Niger insisted on security partnerships that enhance, rather than compromise, their independence. The transformation happening in Niger is not just about one country's development strategy. It is about the emergence of a new international order, where African countries are strategic actors rather than passive recipients of external decisions. It is about the validation of independence as the foundation for sustainable development. What emerges in its place will be more competitive, more dynamic, and ultimately more reflective of African agency and ambition. Niger's success proves that the old era of guaranteed spheres of influence and permanent dependency relationships is ending. The revolution in African international relations has begun, and Niger just proved that it is unstoppable. The blueprint exists, the success has been demonstrated, and the momentum is building across the continent. Which African country do you think will be next to follow Traoré's example? Will other African nations find the courage to renegotiate partnerships that no longer serve their interests? Will Russia and other non-Western partners deliver on their promises of technology transfer and capacity building? Drop a comment below. Your thoughts matter, and they help to shape our future content. If this video opened your eyes to what is really happening in Africa and how the continent is reshaping global politics, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our videos about the stories mainstream media won't tell you. Africa is taking control of its own destiny. This story is far from over, and the next chapter might be the most important yet.